Way back in the day, primordial magic popped out of the void, but being the only thing in existence got lonely pretty fast. To fix that, it dumped out enough energy to create light and dimensions, which eventually manifested as the very first living being. This was the gold dragon, a creature as smart as it was powerful, though its massive ego ended up being a serious problem. Instead of being grateful to its creator, the dragon got greedy, deciding it did not actually need a master around. It actually went ahead and devoured the primordial magic itself, only to realize that much power is impossible for one body to hold. The excess energy started leaking out almost immediately, giving life to two new siblings known as the Red and Blue Dragons. Born as total opposites, they did not exactly get along, and the second they locked eyes, it was absolute war. Their elemental clash shook the foundations of reality, dragging on for thousands of years until the gold dragon literally fell asleep from boredom. All that combat energy eventually settled and solidified into actual land, which paved the way for a fourth sibling, the green dragon, to join the family. With the original creator gone and the gold one napping, the trio kept leaking magic, and from that leftover energy, every other race and monster finally started to sprout. Eventually, the gold dragon finally wakes up and takes a look around. Realizing the world is now covered in life born from its own waste, disgusted by the messy nest, it decides a massive cleanup is long overdue. The elves are drafted as the frontline soldiers for this holy purge, targeting the green dragon and the orcs who do not belong there. Meanwhile, the scene shifts over to the front lines of World War III. In the middle of Northeast Asia, a platoon leader is ignoring the war, just to show off a picture of his daughter to a younger subordinate. Even during a serious briefing, he's more focused on being a proud dad, claiming the mission can wait while he brags about his little girl. He actually tries to set the younger soldier up as her boyfriend, right as the deputy platoon leader comes in to interrupt the session. This conflict has been grinding on for years with no end in sight, and the veteran is still exhausting his team with these personal talks. When asked for an answer, the younger guy admits he knows nothing about dating or even what normal kids did before the world burned. The leader jokes that the kid is a total failure at everything but shooting, questioning if he was some kind of special forces unit before this. Seeing a small lizard, the commander asks if there's anything he actually likes, but since the kid does not know, he just gets handed a snack. The veteran hands over a rugged phone containing his life's work, filled with family photos and final letters to his daughter, Jai-Hai. He orders the kid to drop the gun and head to the rear evacuation point and find a real reason to live beyond just being a soldier. But the goodbye is cut short by a massive impact nearby, as an explosion rips through their position and sends gear flying everywhere. The commander's phone is launched high into the night sky, spinning through the air as it begins to glow with a strange energy. It slips through a shimmering dimensional rift and tumbles into a new world, landing right in the middle of a brutal and bloody fantasy battlefield. The device hits the dirt just as a group of orcs is being slaughtered, while an elf warrior works to wipe out every last monster in sight. Panic sets in as the gold dragon arrives to start its purge, unleashing a blinding flash of power that dwarfs the petty ground war. The phone is caught in the middle of the magical crossfire, miraculously surviving the chaos while the surrounding environment burns. Back on Earth, the human war has taken its final heavy toll. The subordinate stares at his fallen mentor through the pouring rain, officially taking command of the platoon after the leader's final breath. He immediately orders the survivors to regroup and move out before the main force arrives. The soldier confirms his new command while securing the fallen captain's belongings, finding the commander's personal phone and pulling it from the wreckage. A family photo on the lock screen serves as a grim reminder of a home he will never see, fueling a new sense of purpose in the middle of this hopeless war. Remembering the captain's vow to get every member of the platoon home safely, he realizes that leaving the man's legacy behind is not an option. Delivering this device becomes a personal mission that he will complete at any cost. Meanwhile, beneath a foreign moon, a small lizard's piece is shattered by the heavy boots of a desperate group of orcs fleeing through the brush. They scramble to regroup and rescue their brothers from the surrounding woods, but a magically infused arrow streaks through the trees with lethal precision. It tears through an orc's leg, pinning him to the ground in an instant, as the rest of the pack realizes they have been caught in a deadly trap. An elf commander watches the slaughter from above with total disdain, viewing the orcs as primitive pests that are rotting her beautiful forest. Her squad closes in to turn the retreat into a full-blown execution, while the remaining orcs struggle to put up any kind of meaningful defense. Dismissing their survival instincts as pathetic, the elf prepares to finish the job, promising to send the survivors to join their dead kin before drawing back her bow for one final, lethal discharge of magical energy. That execution gets interrupted by a massive blast of green energy tearing through the trees, as the orc's literal god descends from the canopy to save what is left of the tribe. This massive green dragon puts itself between the survivors and the elven ambush party, ordering his people to pull back immediately and head deeper into the dark woods. The orcs hesitate to leave their ancestral hunting grounds behind in the middle of a war. But the dragon makes the hard call to abandon their territory to ensure their survival. It is not a permanent loss, as the beast promises a bloody return for everyone involved, swearing a sacred oath on its very existence as the guardian of these wetlands. As the entity that balances life and death in this specific corner of the forest, the green dragon formally declares war on the arrogant knife-ears who dared invade. That promise of reclaiming every inch of lost territory rallies the terrified survivors, letting out a roar that should have signaled the start of a massive counteroffensive. Instead, a mocking voice cuts through the air, belittling the dragon's grand speech and name, followed by a blinding flash of light that slams directly into the green beast's chest. The sudden impact sends the forest guardian reeling back in shock as its defense shatters. Leaving the orcs to watch their only hope get blindsided by a mysterious new predator. A second dragon, shimmering with golden light, dives from the sky to finish the strike, pinning the green lizard to the dirt with overwhelming physical force and magical pressure. This newcomer treats the forest lord like a common pest, calling it a lowly and inferior husk, as the orcs realize they have just traded an elven ambush for a terrifying clash of gods. The golden pride finally makes its grand entrance. And the forest guardian demands to know why its ancient territory is being wiped out. This newcomer just laughs at the question, dismissing the green dragon as a total failure. Calling itself the primordial, this entity looks down on everything as if it owns the world, and the power gap is so massive that the once mighty protector looks like a common bug. It claims to represent the absolute truth of this realm, refusing to let its sacred space be tainted by what it calls filthy, dull beasts. A massive charge of energy builds up as the gold dragon prepares to purge the forest, but even while pinned, the green lizard gets one last insult in about that annoying glow. The primordial does not even flinch, treating the comeback like a fitting eulogy, and fires a point-blank blast intended to send the forest lord into the afterlife. The resulting explosion levels everything, completely erasing the last line of defense, leaving the green dragon to plummet toward death with nothing but bitter resentment. In its final moments, it dreams of having the raw destructive power of the red dragons, or even the cold, calculating intellect that defines the blue dragon lineage. This dying wish for revenge against the golden pride manifests into a single glowing egg which drops out of the sky and right into the waiting hands of a human. Our main character is just standing there in tactical gear, looking at his new prize. Realizing that he's holding the literal reincarnation of a fallen forest god, he kneels down to secure the loot, knowing this tiny shell holds the key to killing a primordial. We are on the brutal Northeast Asia front during the peak of World War III, where Legion is secretly nursing the reincarnated dragon back to health and feeding it mealworms like a common house pet between combat shifts. A sudden call for the deputy platoon leader nearly blows his secret cover, forcing Jin to stash the lizard and snap back into professional soldier mode. This is Sergeant Legion, a man whose reputation for efficiency precedes him, and he steps out of his bunker to find a crowd gathered in the mud. The soldiers have cornered a civilian who wandered into the active war zone, and they explain that a young kid just climbed down from the mountains. The boy is cold and exhausted, standing there with nothing but a small dog, trying to trade a handful of cigarettes for enough food to survive the night. Jin does not even blink before giving the cold order to send the kid away. He walks off without a second thought, leaving the child to starve alone. The rest of the squad is shaken by their leader's total lack of empathy, but the desperate boy refuses to quit and grabs onto Jin's tactical gear. Jin keeps moving like the kid is not there, ignoring the boy's tight grip. The other soldiers start whispering about how heartless their commander has become, convinced the war turned him into a monster with no humanity left in him. Yet something about the boy's persistence finally makes the veteran soldier pause, and as he looks into those desperate eyes, he finally stops to listen. Jin finally cracks and hands over some of his own rations to the starving pair, and the rest of the squad realizes they'd all be dead without their deputy leader's quiet competence. Seeing the kid and his dog finally eat makes the cold commander seem almost human for a second. The men start speculating about what kind of badass life he led before the uniforms and the mud, convinced he was some elite special ops legend born with a rifle in his hand. That mystery is cut short when the distinct buzz of enemy drones fills the air. Jin snaps back into tactical mode, ordering the men into the trenches to prepare for a swarm. Explosions start rocking the perimeter as the automated killers begin their dive-bombing runs, and the camp turns into a frantic scramble for survival. Amidst the panic, the kid and his dog are left completely exposed in the open field. The deputy leader doesn't hesitate for a heartbeat, charging toward the danger with his weapon drawn. Dust and debris kick up everywhere as he dives into the line of fire, while his squad screams for him to get back before he gets himself killed. Jin ignores the warnings, focusing entirely on shielding the boy from the incoming shrapnel. He provides cover fire from a vulnerable position, putting his own life on the line for a stranger. A direct hit takes out one of the drones, but the chaos is far from over. It turns out the monster of war was not always a cold-blooded killer, because before the world burned, his daily routine involved feeding lizards and caring for pets. He was just a part-timer who found peace in the quiet company of animals, finding his only real happiness in making sure every living thing under his care was safe. No matter how much respect the military gives him for his skills on the battlefield, or how many medals and honors the higher-ups throw his way for his service, the glory of being a war hero feels like a heavy burden he never wanted to carry. Deep down, Jin is still just that guy who wants to go back to his simple life at the pet shop, but that dream feels miles away as he lunges through the air to catch a live grenade. He commits fully to the dive, putting his body between the explosive and the kid, with his only thought being a desperate wish to survive this and see another day. The metal connects with his palms and he pulls it into his chest to contain the blast. Curling into a ball on the ground as he waits for the world to go white, Every muscle in his body tenses up while he squeezes the device tight, bracing for the impact, but the seconds tick by in total silence while the expected explosion fails to happen. Opening his eyes in confusion, the soldier starts to realize he is not dead and the camp is still standing. It turns out the projectile is a total dud, though looking closer, it is not a piece of weaponry at all. Instead of shrapnel and gunpowder, he's holding a strange, glowing egg covered in ancient patterns. Suddenly, a massive voice booms through the area, claiming to be the shadow that covers the forest, and the sovereign who decides who lives or dies within the murky depths of the swamps. A massive green dragon phantom towers over him, commanding this warrior to take the egg and raise it. Jin can barely process the shift from a life-or-death explosion to a divine summoning, especially with the massive eye of a legendary beast staring him down from the ether. Before he can even think about dropping the thing, the shell begins to crack under the pressure. The dragon is losing it because Jin is treating a legendary egg like a disposable grenade, but instead of apologizing, the soldier keeps his sidearm leveled at the massive beast. This earns him a lecture about how humans are the same kind of fools regardless of which world they come from. As the entity claims to be the collective consciousness of every green dragon to ever exist, looking at the egg rolling in the dirt, the dragon realizes Jin sees this divine form as nothing more than a trick, and just as the beast starts to roar again, it suddenly cuts itself off. It realizes this brute is actually smart enough to hold the precious cargo hostage to gain leverage, though Jin ignores the posturing to ask the only question that matters. He needs to know if he's actually dead or if this is just some weird hallucination, and the dragon confirms his life is over, which is usually the fine print when you get ice-guyed. The first thing on his mind is not his own soul, but the safety of his squad and the kid he was protecting. That level of selflessness annoys the dragon, who thinks a second life is too valuable to waste on trivial attachments, yet even with the confirmation of his death, the soldier does not lower his guard for a second. The dragon is eventually forced to admit it has no idea what happened to the people he left behind, and internally the beast is starting to sweat because Jin is not reacting like a normal human. Most people would be paralyzed by the sight of a mountain-sized lizard, but this guy just looks for an opening, leading Jin to demand why the dragon is so clueless if it was the one who chose him. It turns out the selection was intentional, but the actual transport was completely out of the dragon's hands. They both got caught in a dimensional rift triggered by the gold dragon's power, and now they're just drifting through the void between life and death with no clear way out. As the dragon's vision started to fade into that endless void, a divine voice suddenly cut through the silence to wake it up. This voice introduced a system called Bixrai and demanded the selection of a breeder, which is just a fancy way of saying they need a chosen hero to raise the dragon. Looking at the soldier now, the beast realizes this human is the exact support it needs, possessing the cold, calculating intellect of a blue dragon and the relentless, aggressive fighting spirit of a red dragon. Even if he just looks like a regular guy from another world, the lizard is finally convinced that its choice was not a mistake after all. Jin catches on to the rambling and asks what this divine voice and system are actually about, only for a notification to chime in and greet him like a welcome screen. He starts scrolling through a window explaining how to utilize these new features, and the dragon starts freaking out because that voice belongs to the absolute creator of dimensions. While the soldier tries to navigate the UI on his phone, the dragon explains that the creator is stepping in because the gold dragon broke the world's balance. A new prompt appears on the screen asking them to select a starting race, offering up humans as the first choice for their balance of freedom. Next on the list are dwarves, who specialize in the power of creation. The final option is the nobility of the elven race, but the dragon immediately shuts that down by claiming all those knife-ears are already dead. The dragon hypes up orcs as the ultimate warriors of the battlefield, but Jin barely has time to question the choice before the system takes over. Just like that, the orc race is officially locked in as his starting faction. Both of them are caught off guard by how fast the interface moves, especially when it classifies orcs as uncivilized and dumps the extra points into his stats. His new leadership and charisma boost triggers the dragon breeder title, maxing out his taming ability. The soldier is still trying to figure out what a taming stat even does, while the dragon starts glowing like a literal beacon for the coming transfer. The lizard gets dramatic, claiming the golden era is over and a green dawn is rising. It crowns Jin as the hero meant to take down the Golden Pride, asking him to build a green legion and eventually bring the dragon back to life. This is supposedly his grand destiny, but the kid has zero interest in the speech. He shuts the dragon up with a few rounds to see if it even feels pain, leaving nothing behind but a small green orb where the massive beast once stood. A pillar of light engulfs him as the system finally initiates the world transfer. While falling through the void, he reflects on his simple dream of just raising things. That was his last wish before getting dragged into this divine mess, but it turns out the Bixrai system was not exactly a good listener. It skipped the part about what he actually wanted to spend his time raising, and now he is about to find out what kind of nightmare he has been dropped into. Jin wakes up sinking into what feels like a bottomless ocean, wondering if he actually kicked the bucket during the transfer. The system is not wasting time though, automatically taming a nearby slime and using his modern military gear as literal monster food. That K5 pistol gets absorbed into the blob, triggering an instant evolution which jumps the creature straight to level 20 before he even hits the ground. He is left gasping for air as he finally breaks the surface, eventually dragging himself onto the grass under a strange new moon. Before he can even catch his breath, a small, squeaky creature hops over, introducing itself with a cheerful sound. Instinct kicks in and he yeets the thing into the woods, but the real shock comes when he looks down at his own hands. They're huge, blue, and definitely not the ones he was born with, making it clear that the human soldier is officially gone. The system has fully committed to the orc race, tusks and all. This little slime does not seem to mind the new look, bouncing right back to his side, though Jin is more focused on his empty holster. Every piece of gear he brought from the other side has completely vanished, leaving him with nothing but this weirdly cute mutant blob, which is currently busy digesting the last of his high-tech equipment. Jin stares in disbelief as the slime finishes off the last of his gear, realizing this creature might be a lot more dangerous than it looks. Seeing a chance to escape while the blob is busy with his gloves, he spots a mysterious glowing egg on the forest floor and snatches it up, leaving Dookie chirping in confusion as he makes a run for it. The plan is to put as much distance between him and that gear-eating monster as possible, but the dark woods have other plans for a lone orc. A sudden glint in the trees catches his eye just a second too late, as a projectile streaks through the air and narrowly misses his face. He barely has time to register the arrow before a shadow lunges from the brush, revealing a goblin with a dagger aimed straight for his throat. Instinct takes over and he shouts for the only ally he has left, and Dookie arrives in a blur of slime to intercept the lethal strike. The creature shifts its form with impossible speed, manifesting a tactical vest just in time to absorb a second goblin's sneak attack. That slime is not just a pet, it is an arsenal, flowing up his arm to reshape itself. And the system confirms the slime transform skill is officially online. Dookie reconstructs into a familiar K5 pistol, letting Jin put a bullet right through the monster's head. The sound of modern warfare echoes through the trees, alerting a nearby goblin camp, and even the locals in a distant tavern realize that the quiet of the forest is officially over. The gunshot did not just rattle the tavern, it catches the attention of a high-tier elf scout nearby, who moves through the forest canopy with the kind of speed you only see in top-tier hunters, landing near the source of the noise to figure out who's bringing modern artillery to a fantasy world. Whoever she is, she's clearly not a fan of the sudden noise pollution, and her arrival means the secret of the gun is not going to stay hidden for long. Meanwhile, deeper in the woods, a group of local goblins is losing their minds over the commotion. Shaking in their boots and terrified that something bigger and meaner is coming for them, though they do not realize the real threat is already standing right behind them. Jin is not in the mood for their chatter and shuts the whole group down with a single command. He's established a pretty clear hierarchy here. He's the one in charge and they don't speak unless allowed. The little guys get the message loud and clear, terrified of the man who just took over their cave. With the peanut gallery silenced, he finally gets a second to sort through his loot and check his phone, while Dookie hangs around like a loyal pet waiting for the next order. Jin starts weighing his options, knowing he cannot just hide in a hole forever while the region is on alert. Suddenly, he calls Dookie into action as another threat lunges from the shadows, and the slime reacts instantly, flowing over his body to provide a layer of high-tech protection. It's a perfect defensive transition, absorbing the impact before the enemy can even land a scratch, and even with a goblin's blade pressed against his chest, the tactical vest holds firm. That's the cue to switch from defense to offense as the slime begins to reshape itself once again, letting Jin trigger slime transform to manifest the K5 pistol and finish the fight. He has the lead goblin dead in his sights, activating the skill to lock in his focus. The hammer drops as he engages the triple action mechanism, dumping a burst of rounds straight into the monster's open mouth. The rest of the pack panics, trying to return fire with their own primitive bows, but Jin is already moving, closing the distance to line up the next shot. This guy does not give them a chance to regroup, putting 2 more rounds into the archer's chest to drop him instantly, with the immediate threats neutralized. The skirmish ends as quickly as it started, leaving a trail of bruised goblins behind. Jin takes a moment to scan the cave, making sure no more reinforcements are lurking in the dark. Even with the wind, the strain of the fight is starting to catch up with him. The pistol starts to lose its shape, vibrating as the transformation reaches its limit. Dookie melts back into its original slime form, exhausted from mimicking a high-tech firearm. Jin pulls out his logbook to record his findings on his new companion, noting that the slime can mimic anything it consumes until its energy runs dry. The firepower is definitely limited though, since the shots act more like rubber bullets than actual lethal rounds. It's only good for about 5 shots per cycle, meaning he cannot rely on it for a prolonged siege. With the cave secure for now, he pulls out his phone to try and get some answers from the AI. But since the app is useless for navigation, he decides it is time to make a real phone call. The phone is basically a paperweight since none of the standard functions are actually working. Jin realizes he's properly stranded without any digital lifeline to his home world. Dookie interrupts the realization by dragging over a massive, glowing green egg, and as soon as Jin touches it, a telepathic message starts echoing in his mind. Some green dragon entity claims he's a hero summoned to resurrect it and lead a legion. It's pretty clear he's just been kidnapped to serve as a mercenary for this thing's agenda. He tries to get some actual directions by interrogating the goblin survivors, but they just stare back with blank expressions and incoherent noises. Shouting questions in English does not yield any results either, since they do not understand a word. The language barrier is absolute, leaving him with zero leads on where he actually is. Since the natives are useless for info, he decides the dragon inside that egg is his only hope. Hatching it and getting some real answers is the only way he's going to navigate this situation. But before he can worry about the dragon, he has to focus on simple survival. Overplanning is a death sentence here, so he sets a goal to secure a safe base. He heads out to scout the terrain, knowing he cannot stay out in the open for long. Watching the local goblins work gives him a better idea of their behavior and strength. They're primitive but aggressive, making them the most dangerous variable in the immediate area. Jin tracks their movements from a distance to avoid being spotted while he plans his next move. These natives are definitely the biggest threat to his safety right now. And based on the rations they're carrying, their main camp is likely only a day's march away. Jin concludes the scouts were just part of a larger patrol and calls over his pet to transform into a familiar K5 pistol. Reinforcements are likely on the way, so he needs to squeeze out some intel fast. Since talking has not worked, he walks up to the captives to try a more visual approach. He starts drawing stick figures in the dirt, identifying himself as the first figure to establish some ground rules. This little diagram is his only way to bridge the communication gap, so he points at the goblins next to make sure they are following along. Next comes a sketch of their camp and the rest of their group, punctuated by a very clear question about where they are hiding. The goblins just start screeching gibberish at him, offering nothing but panicked noises that do not help his scouting mission. Their constant gob sounds are not getting anyone anywhere, leading Jin to press the barrel of the K5 against one of their heads. Diplomacy is officially off the table, and he makes it clear that staying silent is going to have a very messy ending. He points the weapon at the drawing and then at the fresh graves he has already dug, giving them a very simple choice between talking or filling those holes. The threat finally clicks, and one of them points toward a distant ridge. Jin realizes their base is a bit further out than he expected. While the interrogation wraps up, someone is lurking in the treeline watching Jin's every move. It is an elf named Celia, and she is clearly not here to make friends. Unaware of the audience, the big guy decides to give the scouts a little treat, handing back some jerky he had confiscated from their own supplies. The goblins scarf it down like they have not eaten in weeks. But the reaction is immediate and way more intense than a snack break should be. A strange glow erupts from the leftover food in Jin's gear, triggering a system notification that this was not just ordinary trail mix. Apparently feeding them that horned frog jerky was enough to tame the scouts, turning the former enemies into loyal followers while Jin learns their language. Seeing this absolute madness from the bushes is enough for Celia. And she wastes no time making a break for it to report back. She activates a telepathic link to contact her people's leadership, reaching out directly to the High Elders to deliver an urgent update. The council answers the call, demanding to know what is worth interrupting them for. Celia explains that she has found something dangerous near the human village, her eyes wide as she tries to process what she just witnessed. She reports seeing an orc, or what she thinks is an orc, standing over the scouts and claims he is using the green dragon's most powerful taming magic to build an army. The elders are left reeling, unable to believe a lowly orc could possess that kind of legendary power. Celia remains kneeling before the elders as they process her report, but the council is far from impressed with her urgent news. One elder identifies Celia Tuscarella as the one who lost her bowstring, and asks the young scout exactly how many years she has been alive. Hearing she is barely 150 years old earns her a scoff, as the elders dismiss her as just another undisciplined kid. This total rejection of her warning leaves the scout speechless, but the elder is not finished and summons Callian Aramalt, the Son of Light. Her direct superior arrives to answer for his subordinate's claims, immediately catching heat for failing to keep his team in line. The elder questions her logic and threatens to take the whole unit behind the mother tree, and they dump the mess into Callian's hands before fading away. Once the elders are gone, the commander lets out a heavy sigh, acknowledging her grudge since that dragon crippled her and ruined her archery. He points out that the creature was wiped out long ago by the gold dragon, and calls her claim a blasphemous lie since the dragon was already eradicated. She tries to stand her ground, but he shuts the conversation down instantly, berating her for bypassing him to bring rumors to the High Council. Callian demands to know if she even respects the chain of command, and Celia is forced to accept the dismissal while her warning goes ignored. Celia remains behind after the council meeting to process the rejection, cursing the elders for being stubborn fools while lashing out at the ground. She knows exactly what she saw, and her injury should not make her report any less valid. If the High Council will not listen, she will just have to bring them the creature's head, vowing to personally erase the monster that took her arm from the world. Out in the forest, a massive lizard makes quick work of its lunch. Jin and the goblins watch the predator finish its meal from the safety of the brush. The little guys label that one running meat and claim it is actually quite tasty. A giant armored crab scuttles past the group next, earning the title of crawling meat that supposedly tastes like garbage. When a giant bear-like beast lets out a roar that shakes the trees, the goblins classify it as strong meat that is far too scary to mess with. They explain that their tribe's coming-of-age ceremony required them to collect monster droppings, but their cowardice led to failure and a permanent exile from the village. It does not seem to bother them, though, now that they have found a master of green. Jin tries to shut that down immediately, but they are already following his lead, insisting that they must be the same demonic race because they share a common bond. To prove their point, they grab his hand to compare skin tones, using the slight green tint as definitive proof that they are all family. The goblins even try to lecture him on racial inclusivity, claiming everyone in the forest is kin. Jin keeps watch over the fire while the moon hangs high over the forest, letting the goblins rest after a long day of trekking through the dangerous woods. He starts reflecting on the prehistoric predators they encountered during the journey and the massive armored monsters that make this entire region a constant death trap. While logging these details in his notebook, his mind begins to drift toward the past. Back in his old life, a fantasy world like this would have been a dream come true. Even with his new green companion snoring nearby, the silence of the night feels heavy. The quiet of the forest is not exactly helping him relax or find any peace. Instead, it's letting all the memories he usually suppresses crawl back to the surface. As the campfire crackles, the flickering light starts to shift into something much darker. The small flames grow into a massive inferno from a life he thought he left behind. He is suddenly back in the middle of a burning village, watching his world turn to ash. A notification on a screen flashes a message that changed the course of his life, and the heat of that memory feels more real than the actual fire in front of him. This total loss is why he is not the same guy who used to crave adventure and excitement. A sudden snap of a twig nearby breaks the vision and brings him back to reality, pulling him into a state of high alert with a sharp jolt of pure adrenaline. The noise startles the goblins awake as they realize something is moving in the brush. Jin immediately aims his weapon and demands to know who's lurking in the shadows, only to find two soldiers caught completely off guard at the very edge of the light. The standoff at the campfire turns into mutual shock as Jin keeps his gun leveled at the newcomers. He did not expect to run into other people out here, especially not while looking like a monster himself. The soldiers are just as rattled, immediately labeling him a wicked orc and drawing their steel. Jin tries to talk them down before things get bloody, but his goblin subordinates are not interested in a peaceful chat and lunge for the kill. He screams for them to stand down, but the chaos is already in motion. A blur of motion cuts through the trees before the goblins can land a single hit, as an elven warrior drops from the canopy with perfect timing. She moves like a literal lightning strike, knocking the goblins away from the terrified soldiers. It is a masterclass in speed that leaves both sides of the skirmish completely blindsided. With one powerful kick, she sends the lead goblin spiraling into the dirt, effectively ending the immediate threat to the human scouts. The force of her landing creates a shockwave that forces everyone to reset their positions. Jin can only watch as the power scaling in this world just took a massive jump. She positions herself as a shield for the humans, treating Jin like a high-level boss. This elf is not here for a dialogue choice. She has already decided Jin is a servant of the Green Dragon. The warrior demands he learn her name before she carries out his death sentence. Celia Tuscarella introduces herself with the kind of title that usually belongs to a main character. To her, Jin is nothing more than a wicked shaman leading a pack of foul monsters. And in the name of the Golden Light, she's officially declared open season on his entire party. Celia prepares her finishing move, committing fully to her role as the righteous executioner. She officially sentences both the orc shaman and his goblin subordinate to death. Jin is completely lost, having no idea why she is suddenly so aggressive. It turns out the language barrier is making her sound like absolute gibberish to him. So he tries to surrender and call for a peaceful end to the fighting, but to the humans, his speech just sounds like mindless monster grunting. Celia warns her men to stay back, convinced Jin is trying to weave a mind control spell. The total lack of communication makes the situation spiral out of control. Jin decides a warning shot is the only way to force everyone to stop and listen, pulling his weapon to regain some leverage in this mess. A dry click is the only response he gets from the firearm, and the realization that he is out of ammo lands right as his companion starts to freak out. With the magazine empty, his biggest advantage in this world just became a useless paperweight. Celia takes the clicking sound as a failed spell and moves in for the kill, closing the distance in a blur and leaving Jin no time to find a backup plan. Her blade strikes with the lethal precision of a high-level warrior. And it is the goblin who takes the full force of the blow, getting thrown back as the human soldiers watch the execution. Jin tries to reach out, but he's far too late to stop the fatal momentum. Seeing his friend skewered triggers something in Jin that looks a lot less human than before. Jin lashes out, catching Celia completely off guard with a sudden, violent counter. He delivers a heavy strike that sends her reeling back through the trees, leaving her stunned that a supposed monster could actually land a hit on her. Jin presses the advantage by shoving the empty gun right in her face, which forces her to jump back and create some distance before he can pull the trigger. The elf quickly recovers her stance, realizing she cannot afford to underestimate him anymore. Her pride takes a massive hit as she starts ranting about her status as a superior being, vowing to stop holding back and use every bit of her power against him. Celia calls on the wind spirits to buff her speed and finish the fight right now. The intense pressure and the strain of his transformation make Jin's body start to lock up, and his goblin buddy realizes they're in way over their heads as Jin reverts to normal. Jin finds out his hand is completely unresponsive and bleeding out from the previous exchange, and the little guy tries to push him to safety, begging him to run away. The goblin offers to buy him some time while Jin desperately tries to reload his weapon. Celia's wind magic starts tearing through the air before he can even seat the magazine, catching Jin with invisible blades that leave him bleeding from deep gashes across his chest. She moves way too fast for his eyes to track, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Despite the massive blood loss, he manages to steady his aim for one last attempt. Knowing this next bullet is the only thing standing between him and an early grave. As she lunges forward to end it, Jin bets his entire life on this final shot. He pulls the trigger, hoping the gamble pays off, but Celia is just too fast, slipping past the bullet like it's standing still. Instead of finishing the job on him, she pivots and slashes right through the little goblin, sending the little guy crashing to the dirt as he tries to process what just hit him. Duki is barely holding on as the kid screams out for his only friend, and as he looks down at his broken gear, it's clear the damage is already done. Celia does not even slow down, treating the goblin's sacrifice like a minor speed bump, while the physical form of the little guy starts to dissolve right into the grass. Our hero drops his weapon in a daze, his mind completely locking up, and it does not even matter if his shot landed when his partner is literally melting away. Reaching out for him does nothing, as the goblin is reduced to a puddle of slime, and even as he tries to scoop up what's left, the remains just slip through his fingers. The loss of his companion acts like a final breaking point for his sanity, leaving him staring at his empty hands while the world around him fades to black. This trauma forces a suppressed memory to the surface, dragging him back to a past life where he watched his brothers in arms die the same way. The system detects the mental collapse and triggers a severe PTSD status effect, which immediately chains into a hidden berserker skill fueled by his psychological break. He loses every ounce of his humanity as the skill takes over his body, and now Celia is not fighting a man anymore, she is fighting a monster with nothing left to lose. The berserk Jin moves in for the kill as the rest of the goblin squad scrambles to safety. His heavy steps shaking the ground while he closes the distance to the woman who started this. This is not the same guy anymore, it's a mindless engine of destruction fueled by that hidden system skill. Celia is completely defenseless as the monster looms over her, and his strike connects with enough force to potentially end the fight permanently. But right at the peak of his rage, a sudden memory of Duki forces its way to the surface, snapping him back into his own body just in time to stop the massacre. The red haze finally starts to drain from his vision as he looks around the battlefield, and that is when he notices a strange glow coming from the slime puddle his friend left behind. It turns out the goblin did not just vanish, he left behind a tiny, pulsing core. The remains of the slime start to vibrate and gather together as the system kicks into gear, triggering a fatal detection protocol on his terminal that floods the area with light. A recorded message from his past mentor plays across the screen, acting as a final anchor for his sanity. Suddenly, that glowing core splits apart, and a small creature named Pino pops into existence, followed immediately by another one named Sini as a hidden trait finally triggers. The fission reproduction skill is effectively turning one lost companion into a whole team of mini slimes, leaving the kid to gather them up while the weight of everything finally hits him. With the berserker state gone, the massive toll on his body and mind starts to catch up, and he finally collapses in the dirt as the adrenaline from the transformation runs dry.